As long as humanity exists, something new will come along. Otherwise, football dies. That is a quote from the brilliant Italian tactician Arrigo Sacchi, and honestly, it perfectly captures exactly what we are going to dive into today. You see, football is a living organism. It has to constantly evolve, or it just risks becoming stagnant and predictable.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tracing one of the most radical, fascinating transformations in the history of football tactics. We're looking at a position that for decades was completely isolated from the rest of the team. We are talking about the reinvention of the goalkeeper, from a static, line-hugging shot stopper into a dynamic, ball-playing 11th outfield player. It's a journey that literally changed how the beautiful game is played.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The tactical revolution. 2. Birth of the sweeper-keeper. 3. The Celtic precursor. 4. Van der Sar's mastery. And finally, 5. The modern numbers game.
Let's jump right into part 1, the tactical revolution. The seeds of this modern revolution were actually planted back in the late 1960s and early 70s by Dutch genius Johan Cruyff and his pioneering coach Rinus Michels. They came up with the concept of total football. And this wasn't just a new formation. They completely reimagined the game as a swirling, highly skilled spatial contest. The idea was that whoever manages and controls the limited space on the field wins. It required insane fluidity. Any outfield player could take over the role of any other player. Attackers defended, defenders attacked. It was beautiful to watch, but it heavily relied on an incredibly high press.
Which brings us to part 2, birth of the sweeper-keeper.
To make that aggressive, high-pressing system work, Cruyff realized the most radical positional change couldn't just happen in the midfield. It had to happen at the very back of the pitch. By having a keeper who could roam far from the goal, the entire team could press even higher up. The goalkeeper essentially became an auxiliary defender. A great example of this is the 1974 World Cup. Cruyff actually favored Jan Jongbloed over more traditional shot stoppers. Now, Jongbloed was considered old and maybe a bit eccentric, but Cruyff spotted that he was great with his feet and totally happy to roam outside his penalty area. And that exact trait allowed the Dutch national team to push their defensive line way up and just suffocate their opponents.
To really put this into perspective, for decades, the traditional goalkeeper was rigid, defensive, and quite literally chained to the goal line. But this new Cruyffian sweeper-keeper, completely fluid. They were suddenly tasked with distributing the ball, maintaining possession, and acting as that extra outfield player. Without this massive mental shift, we absolutely wouldn't have the brilliant modern practitioners of this art that we see today.
Let's look at part 3, the Celtic precursor.
Now, you might think the Dutch invented this entirely, but before total football became a widespread philosophy, there was an amazing, almost accidental precursor over in Scotland. We are talking about Ronnie Simpson. At an age when most players were long retired, Simpson became a vital, fearless sweeper for Jock Stein's legendary 1967 Celtic team. The guy was nearly 37 years old when he won the European Cup. It's just astounding. While the Dutch were theorizing total football, Simpson was practically applying it. Jock Stein had blended this team perfectly, and Simpson's vast experience and completely unique style allowed the defenders in front of him to push forward with total confidence. His captain, Billy McNeil, hit the nail on the head. He said that anything that went behind the defenders, Ronnie would just come out and deal with it. In fact, McNeil noted that in training, Simpson always wanted to play as a striker. So this wasn't just a guy who stopped shots. He functioned just as much as a footballer as he did a goalie. He communicated, he organized, and he enthusiastically swept up danger.
And there is literally no better example of this daring mindset than during the 1967 European Cup final against Inter Milan in Lisbon. During the match, Celtic were pressing super high, just bombarding the Inter goal. Suddenly, a ball gets played through the middle, leaving the 36-year-old Simpson totally isolated about 30 yards off his line against an oncoming attacker. Most keepers would have panicked and just booted it into the stands. Instead, Simpson astonishingly backheeled the ball to his teammate John Clark. A backheel 30 yards from his own net. It was absolute madness, a real heart-in-the-mouth moment, but it worked perfectly, showcasing his incredible footwork and absolute fearlessness.
Moving right along to part 4, Van der Sar's mastery.
Fast forward to the 1990s, and we see this raw, daring sweeper-keeper concept really build into an exact, calculated science. Johan Cruyff visualized a highly complex 3-4-3 system at Ajax that completely rendered the goalkeeper as just another outfield player with gloves. While he experimented with a few different keepers, it was the lanky, unflappable Edwin van der Sar who proved to be the ultimate solution to Cruyff's dilemma. And it makes a lot of sense when you realize Van der Sar actually started his youth career as a defender, which gave him an incredible natural advantage when the ball was at his feet.
Legendary goalkeeping coach Frans Hoek drilled some very specific traits into Van der Sar. He taught him to seamlessly act as that 11th outfield player and to restart plays effectively. The ultimate priority here was ball possession. Hoek demanded that every single ball played upfield had the distinct purpose of finding a teammate, not just mindlessly clearing it away. In fact, Hoek taught him to organize his defense so well that it actively eliminated the need to make saves in the first place. Think about that. A goalie whose job is to organize so well he doesn't have to do goalie things.
But evolution isn't always warmly welcomed. When Van der Sar eventually left Ajax for Juventus in Italy, he really struggled. The Italian style, known as calcio, preferred to cut down on risks, which severely restricted his possession-based style. Juventus actually ended up rejecting him, bringing in Gianluigi Buffon instead. But the story doesn't end there. Van der Sar found ultimate vindication in Champions League glory later in his career with Manchester United. It proved that when he was placed in a system that actually valued his distribution and calm demeanor, he was arguably the greatest of his generation.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the modern numbers game.
So, how does this all tie into today? Well, this evolution of the keeper directly influences the incredibly complex tactical formations we see right now. As detailed in Ray Power's fantastic book, Soccer Tactics 2014, modern football relies deeply on what he calls the numbers game. We saw this brilliantly showcased in the 2014 World Cup. There was this massive diversity of tactics, with teams constantly shifting between formations like 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, and 3-4-3. But here is the key takeaway. None of these fluid, high-intensity formations work efficiently without a goalkeeper who can distribute the ball and sweep up behind those high defensive lines.
But as we've learned today, numbers really aren't everything. As Jonathan Wilson points out, tactics are fundamentally a combination of formation and style. It's the merging of those rigid numbers we talk about with the actual fluid style of football implemented on the pitch. It's about player strengths, it's about movement, and it's about those split-second, real-time decisions, like a 36-year-old Ronnie Simpson deciding to backheel a ball 30 yards from his net.
So, circling all the way back to Arrigo Sacchi's opening warning that football must evolve or die, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. We've seen the keeper evolve from a static shot stopper into a crucial 11th outfield player. So what will be the next great tactical evolution in football? What radical shift is waiting just around the corner? Take a moment to really think about that the next time you watch a match. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.